What if you no longer feel called to anything? This is Pastor Wayne. Today I'm answering a question that doesn't get talked about enough in the Christian circles. Pastor Wayne, someone's going to read this and then we'll go into it. So here it is. Pastor Wayne, I used to feel called. I used to feel passionate, but now I don't feel called to anything. What happened? Well, let me say this. If that's you, stick around because this isn't about purpose. It's about identity. Let me say that again. What if I no longer feel called to anything? Well, that question usually shows up after disappointment, burnout, or even prolonged waiting. But we need to separate two things, calling and the feeling of calling. Okay? Feelings fluctuate. Your calling doesn't. Many believers confuse emotional intensity with divine direction. When you first sensed purpose, it may have felt exciting, clear, energizing. But calling matures. And sometimes the emotional fire will quieten so that your character can deepen. Losing the feeling of calling doesn't mean you lost the call itself. It means maybe you're transitioning from inspiration to endurance. And endurance is quieter. But let's go even deeper. There are usually 3 reasons someone stops feeling called. First is burnout. When you've poured out without rest, your passion drains. Exhaustion can mimic a loss of purpose. Second is disappointment. You stepped out and it didn't work. You stepped out in faith. And part of you may have shut down hope to avoid further hurt. Third, identity confusion. If your calling became your identity, when it slowed down, you felt like you disappeared. But your calling is something you stored. It's not who you are. You're a son, you're a daughter. That comes first. Okay? So instead of asking, what am I called to do? Ask, who am I becoming right now? Those hidden seasons, they refine us through humility, patience, resilience, trust. Obedience in obscurity builds capacity for visibility. Let me say that again. Obedience in obscurity builds capacity for visibility. David was called long before he was crowned. Moses was formed long before he was followed. If you don't feel called right now, it may not be loss, it may be formation. Calling is often easier to see in hindsight than in the moment, so stay faithful to what's in front of you. Clarity usually follows consistency. And I believe that sometimes God removes the feeling of calling so you'll seek Him, not just the assignment. If purpose becomes the focus more than presence, it becomes an idol. And God loves you too much to let your identity anchor to performance. So if you're in a season where you feel there's a loss of direction, you're not abandoned, you're being recalibrated. What a difference. So remember this. It doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean you missed it. It doesn't mean you failed. It means God is building depth where no one can see. And when the next assignment comes, you'll carry it differently. So if you're navigating a quiet season, if you need some clarity, structure, guidance, go to PastorWayneSutton.com. PastorWayneSutton.com. Scroll down on the main page, sign up for a coaching session. Sign up for some coaching or some counseling. If you feel stuck, I'd love to work with you. And again, thanks for being here. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you on the next episode.